Karma here with your July Astrology cheat codes. If you are here, you recognize that we are astrologically influenced by the planets and stars. And with that understanding of how the energy influences us, we can better navigate life's obstacles. So welcome to the club, and let's take an overall look at what happens in July. All right, so in July, we have several planets going into retrograde. We have Neptune, Saturn going into retrograde in the realm of Aries and will retrograde back to Pisces. We have Mercury going into retrograde in the realm of Leo. We have Venus transitioning into both Cancer and Gemini. We have a Capricorn full moon, and we have a Leo new moon. And additionally, Uranus crosses into Gemini. So there's a lot happening in this month, especially with this retrograde energy, because many of these things are aspecting back to Neptune and Saturn. So there's an emphasis here on lessons, okay? And when Saturn hits retrograde, it can become like a pretty ugly energy. Saturn retrograde energy can sometimes be a little funky, okay? Because Saturn is the planet of karma. Saturn is also the planet of lessons, right? So as it goes into retrograde, it makes you retrospective of the lessons that you need to learn. And sometimes that can be kind of hard. That's a hard energy, okay? That's a hard energy to navigate. So, Saturn is going to be in retrograde for a minute. All right. So this is just the beginning, but it will cross back into Pisces, so it won't be as active in that Aries energy, but nonetheless, still lessons on lessons, okay? Lessons on lessons. All right, so I'm not going to go into deep analysis of each individual transit. I will give you the energy of the transit as it is transitioning into whatever is happening. However, I will create separate videos for all of the things that are happening in July so that we can get a more deep dive look at what it is everyone is supposed to be working on. But this will just be a summary of what's going on in July. So let's talk about the signs. If you are looking at this from the perspective of your rising sign, okay, this will be most accurate for your rising sign. This is because it encompasses your horizon of your life, okay? Your rising sign, your ascendant sign, the horizon of your life. This encompasses everything, okay? If you're looking at this from your sun perspective, your sun sign, this will be in relation to your ego, your attention, your focus, okay? If you are looking at this from your moon sign, this will be in relation to your emotions, your instincts, and your intuition. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the individual signs. Cancer. So July is going to be a heavy retrograde month. We have Neptune and Saturn going into retrograde in your 10th house of ambitions. We have Mercury going into retrograde in your 2nd house of material value. And then we have Uranus entering into your 12th house of your subconscious. Okay, so there's an emphasis here around overall some sort of transition that's happening for you. You have Pluto in your 8th house of Aquarius. So there's some overall, if we're talking about the overall story of what all of this means, there is some sort of transition happening because Pluto is in the 8th house for you, and that is in the realm of Aquarius, but Pluto rules the 8th house because it rules Scorpio, which rules the 8th house, right? So there's an emphasis here of you learning how to leave things in the past, or you acquiring debt or getting rid of debt, some sort of inheritance here that helps to make your life better, some sort of change that is happening that transforms your life, right? So there is an emphasis here around your ambitions and your goals in your 10th house, the things that you value in your 2nd house, and some sort of change. So you know, I don't like to speak on death, but this Cancer, this might even be like, you know, a family passing and, you know, an inheritance of that, because there's heavy emphasis on that 8th house, right, where Pluto sits, in the 12th house where Uranus is transitioning into, right? And that's both 8th and 12th house represent, like, you know, transitioning, illness, transitions, death, right? So there's an emphasis here. And then you have your 2nd house of material possessions, the value that you have, lending and borrowing, right? And then you have the 10th house of your ambitions. So there's heavy emphasis on like a transition of like wealth and like dreams and desires, right, that kind of go towards your overall ambitions. Okay, so let's jump into the dates. On July 4th, Venus enters Gemini, and that is going to be in your 12th house. So Venus will be entering into the 12th house within those first degrees of your subconscious. Okay, so this is your flexibility of mind in the things that you desire or the things that you value. This is Venus. Venus, you know, is feminine energy. Venus represents harmony, love, abundance, peace, you know, creativity. So these are things of your desires. These are things of your illusions or delusions, that there could be an imbalance of mind for you as it relates to this realm of life. And that is sextile to your 10th house, which is your ambitions. And this is your house of Aries, right? So this is an emphasis on like what it is you are assertive in as it relates to your ambitions or goals. So Neptune goes retrograde in that house, right? So it becomes sextile with Venus. There's an emphasis here around creativity. Now, this is, I'm gonna be honest, this is a little bit of a dangerous thing, because the 12th and the 8th house are also houses of illness, right? So I would just say Cancer, just like in the month of July, I would just say be careful. And I don't know why I'm getting that energy. There's somebody here that needs to hear it. There's an emphasis on being careful, right? Especially as it relates to your sexual endeavors, right? You know, wrap it up, you know, do what you need to do to make sure that you are safe. Because again, that 8th house, that 12th house, the 8th house is, you know, the house of transitions. And it's Pluto is going to be sitting there for 17 years, right? So again, I don't want to be very explicit in this video, but there is somebody here, and I'm getting it, like I'm getting chills. There's somebody here that needs to hear to be safe as it relates to like your sexual practices, because your 12th house is your house of destruction as well, house of sickness, house of illness. Okay, so I'm gonna just say that straight out. This energy, you know, somebody here, and I don't know who this is for. Somebody here needs to hear that. Okay, but this is, you know, your self-destructive ways, right? Paying attention to your self-destructive ways and how that plays a part in your ambitions. Now, again, Neptune goes into retrograde in that 10th house of Aries, right? That's your ambitions and your courage, your quick, fast nature around going after something that you truly want. July 7th, Uranus enters Gemini in that 12th house as well. And Uranus is very near Venus, right? Uranus represents sudden change, rapid change, out with the old, in with the new, okay, rebellion, unexpected changes, right? So there's an emphasis here. Again, that 12th house is sextile to that 10th house where Neptune is already in retrograde, and Saturn will soon be in retrograde, and Saturn is the planet of lessons and karma, right? So there's a heavy emphasis here on your 12th house and you thinking about your internal subconscious self and how that plays a part in your ambitions and in your goals, as well as your self-worth, because some 2nd house energy is also going to start popping up here in a second. And that is also your house of sex, right? So again, there's heavy emphasis for, you know, someone or someone's plural to be careful about your sexual endeavors. Be safe, if you catch my drift. Okay. So within this energy, right, Uranus enters into Gemini. There's some sort of sudden change that makes you reflect on your thinking around your actions within this house of your subconscious. Okay. And there could be like an imbalance again. Gemini represents, in a lower vibrating state, an imbalance, right? Flexibility, high vibrating, imbalance, low vibrating. So it really just depends on, where it is you sit in your energy. You may be asked to be flexible about something, or, a dream, a desire, or on the other side of things, a desire or a fantasy may be realized because, you've decided to be flexible in mind. Right? Something that you've always wanted to do with that 10th house ambitions, goals, and achievements, right? So there's an emphasis here for both sides. But again, I always want to, when I feel them feelings, I got to say something. So Uranus entering into Gemini in that 12th house, again, these are moments where you start to be reflective or flexible in your mindset, or there's energy that points at the imbalance or the inflexibility that you have as it relates to your thinking within your subconscious. On July 10th, there's a full moon in Capricorn, and that happens in your 7th house. Okay, so this is your house of long-term bonds. So in January, there would have been a new moon in that 12th house. Emphasis here on that 12th house, okay? That subconscious mind and how it plays a role in things. There would have been a new moon. There would have been something that popped up, very light energy popped up for you to where you would have seen the energy, but not really, it wouldn't have stood out too much, right? Now there's, over the 6 months between the new moon and the full moon, which happens on July 10th, there's an emphasis here on like discovery, or a light shining on specific energy for you. And this is in relation to your deep bonds, your business partner, marriage, long-term relationship, legal battles, right? And again, we have energy in that 8th house, that 10th house, that 12th house, that 2nd house, right? So this could be you moving on from a relationship. This could be you attaining a new relationship, but there's energy around like, is this one that you truly want to attain? Have you fully left things, have you fully left whatever you needed to leave in the past to enter into a new relationship? There's energy around that, okay? Or enter into a new bond, right? I don't even want to say relationship, a bond, because this could be a business partnership. On July 13th, Saturn goes into retrograde in that 10th house. Again, as I have been saying, that 10th house is sextile to that 8th house where Pluto sits in Aquarius, right? So there is an overall transition happening in your life, right? This speaks to, people getting bonuses. Unfortunately, it's life, but people passing and getting inheritances. This speaks to shared money and your spousal's money. So this goes back to somebody could be leaving a marriage or leaving a long-term relationship and trying to figure out the financial aspect as it relates to that. So we have Saturn in this 10th house, and Saturn is the teacher. Saturn is the planet of karma, the effort you put in, the results you get back, right? So there's an emphasis here on you being taught lessons around your past actions, so that going forward you can change them, right? So there's an emphasis here on transition. Like, again, overall, this is a total transition of you. That's what's happening. Total transition of you and your subconscious and the things that happen behind the scenes, how you self-destruct, what it is that you value, and the ambitions and goals that you have. So with this retrograde in this 10th house of Aries, this might speak to the actions that and again, this is very different. All of our birth charts look different, right? It's not going to be the same for everybody, but this speaks to the action that you put in and the results that you get out as it relates to your ambitions and goals. So if you have been sitting back and not putting in any action, and then, you expecting everything, you might see that you're not gonna get everything, right? If you've been putting in the actions towards your ambitions and goals, and you are hoping to see a return there with this retrograde energy in that 10th house, you will see return, but then you'll also get other lessons about how this could be better, right? So again, Saturn is our teacher. Saturn is a rough planet because it's slow. slow moving, structural teaching planet. So in retrograde with the 3 R's, reflection, restructure, repair, there's an emphasis here on that energy and your ambitions and goals, okay? On July 18th, Mercury goes into retrograde in the 2nd house, okay? So this is your 2nd house of Leo. So this is where that Leo energy starts popping in, because we have the Mercury retrograde in the 2nd house of Leo. We have the sun entering Leo, and then we have the new moon in Leo, all happening within like, I want to say 10 days of one another, 24 and 18, like 7. Like within a week, right? Heavy Leo energy, heavy 2nd house energy, right? So this 2nd house to the 12th house is really what we're talking about. That 2nd house represent what it is that you value, your value systems. This is your finances. Again, this goes back to, you know, somebody leaving a marriage could be, right? Somebody transitioning on, trying to leave somebody, could be trying to get, you know, money from your spouse, but you're trying to save your money so that your spouse doesn't take it, but you didn't sign a prenup. You didn't think ahead, you know, head over heels in love, then think about a prenup. And now that ex is going after them coins, right? And now you have lessons around, well, maybe I should have thought about, you know, the total plan before I actually jumped into this thing, right? So, and it could be something different as well. This could be something that relates to like family inheritances. You know, you get additional money, you got to sign a contract, and you go through something legal because you have an inheritance coming towards you, which increases, you know, your possessions, right? Your material value. So this could go, again, all of this energy can go any which way. There's an emphasis here on, you know, your past, your secrets, your pain within your 12th house, your subconscious, your curiosity there, or an imbalance there as it relates to how you explore your material desires, or what it is you feel as desirable, right? What it is you feel as pleasurable. And there's an emphasis here on Mercury bringing back, because it'll be in retrograde, reflection, restructure, repair, energy that has you reflecting on your actions within this realm of life. Okay, on July 22nd, the sun enters Leo, so that's in that same house. So Mercury is there, the sun is there, and then soon after that, the moon will be there as well, right? There will be a new moon in Leo. So there's an emphasis here with the sun crossing into Leo, your focus being on your material values, your possessions, you know, what it is that you value, right? And then as well as the new moon in Leo, there is something here that pops up that you're going to be working on over the next 6 months. These are moon cycles. The new moon shows you like the beginning of something, and the full moon shows you the development of that, like the progress that you've made. So there's something here within your material value, your appetite for sex, your appetite for food, possessions, lending and borrowing, and even your self-worth, that is going to be highlighted and pointed out. And this likely could be something from the past, or something that triggers memories from the past with Mercury in retrograde. Now remember that that house is sextile. The 2nd house of value is sextile to the 12th house of hidden, your subconscious. So this is exploration of how you show up based on your subconscious, right? How it is you value based on your subconscious. And then it's trying to that 10th house. That's easier flow of energy, but that 10th house is where Saturn and Neptune are sitting in retrograde. That's the house of Aries. So again, this speaks to heavy emphasis on lessons around how it is you go after your ambitions, right? What it is that you do in an overall transformation, and how your subconscious shows up within that, okay? Could be your self-sabotaging ways. And then finally on July 31st, Venus enters Cancer. So that is going to be in your 1st house, Cancer. And this is your perceptiveness, okay? This is your sensitivity within yourself, the mask, right? And there is an emphasis here on a square to that 10th house where Neptune and Saturn are in retrograde. And like your identity, like the nurturing caring, could be moody, right? Sensitive self that you express to the world may not necessarily be favorable to an ambition that you're trying to accomplish, and you may need to be a little bit more assertive in your actions, or vice versa, right? You may need to be a little bit more nurturing or perceptive in your actions as it relates to how it is you are showing up within your ambitions and goals. So overall for you, Cancer, there is an emphasis here on your value and how it is that you act, right? Your self-destructing ways in that 12th house of subconscious, that 12th house of Gemini, the self-destructing ways, the desires, fantasies, the illusions, delusions, your mental health, your past, your pain, secrets, all that good stuff is the 12th house. And then also your 10th house, what it is that you want, right? What it is you want to go after, your ambitions and your goals, and how all of that ties together, and adjustments that need to be made in your behavior so that you can get to your highest and greatest good. If you feel a common theme happening over and over and over again in July, that's because it is, right? So pay attention to what keeps popping up and ask for clarity and guidance on how it is you're supposed to move forward, okay? I hope this message reaches you well, Cancer.